at this event. Okay. We have people online as well. So warm welcome to all the people online. Just to say, there is Spanish and English translation available, so please do pick up your headsets from outside. And we also have a request from them to please remember to return the pieces. Thank you. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this event on the role of mayors in preventing violence against women and violence against children, and to learn from mayors what they've been doing on this very important topic. We have a very nice panel lined up for you to share some experiences. The objective really is to learn from the mayors what they've been doing, learn from local policymakers what they've been doing on prevention, but also to share some experiences on how the World Bank, PAHO, UN Women have been implementing cities-based programs on prevention. Thank you all for being here, to our esteemed panelists. I'm going to actually first hand over to Peter Siegenthaler from the World Bank office in Colombia, who's going to give some introductory remarks, and he will also introduce our panelists. Thank you so much, Peter. Over to you.
Thank you.
Oh, and please, there is breakfast and coffee. I know this is an early session, so please do help yourselves to that.
Thank you, Avni, for getting us started. So, voy a cambiar a español.
Going to switch to English. Good morning, everyone. Special greetings to all the residents of the World Bank in Colombia. Welcome to the available of the mayors scaling prevention of violence against children and women on the cities. We have now a panel. I want to extend a thank you to the mayor of Quito for his participation here in person with us. I also want to thank the mayor of Londres that has sent us some virtual remarks that we are going to be able to listen. We have with us Afni Amin, our coordinator of this panel. We have Diego Bejarano of the Rita as well, there she is, and Manuel Contreras as well, Urbino from the World Bank, Viviana, the representative of the UN Women with us. We have, I think I have mentioned already all of us, and once again, thank you and welcome for being here, and of course, welcome to the people online. I would like to start this dialogue with a stimulation, perhaps in a negative way, unfortunately, with some figures that shows the severity of the problem. Worldwide, today, one of each two children or teenagers, meaning more than 1,000 million of children, are suffering a wave of violence per year. From those, 120 has faced some type of forced contact, sexual contact. This is a sad reality that we can see also in the local level. Let's talk about here, Colombia, specifically here, our city, Bogota. Our scene entity is showing some alarming figures of children mistreatment. Between January of at this time, we have more than 11 cases in Colombia, and in Bogota we have more than 1,600 cases of children and teenagers just in the first quarter of this year. So this panel is an excellent opportunity to exchange on how jointly we can identify promote solutions that can revert this type of trend. Perhaps once again, let's start the conversation today with some brief reflections on my behalf. First of all, the violence, it's a complex problem, and that's why it requires also collaborative solutions and comprehensive ones from the global level to the local level, an approach that is multisectoral is needed, including health, security, public health, education, and justice. We have seen in our jobs that collaboration among all of these areas in the local level can lead to a substantial reduction in the levels of violence. The second reflection that I want to talk about, besides the comprehensiveness of these, all the activities that we perform based on the foundation on evidence. The international frameworks inspire, respect our colleagues will introduce that in a minute in panel. Those are examples of how the evidence can lead policies and practices for the prevention and the response to the violence. The third reflection is that we cannot clearly talk about prevention of violence without including the ones that are affected the most: girls, boys, teenagers. They are not just there to be protected, but they should be included in an active way on the discussions and in the decision-making process of the policies that are involved with them. Their active participation ensures that the policies will be relevant and effective. The last reflection and the fourth one is that thanks to your resources and to the density in the areas, cities are strategically located to lead the prevention of violence. And that's why we're so happy to have this conversation with you, with the leaders of the mayors such as Pavel. We have some examples, emerging examples of cities that have implemented some effective policies of security in public spaces that is showing very meaningful reductions on the incidence of violence. And also, that is something that we can see clearly, and we promote that in our projects that are sponsored by the Global Bank here in Colombia. And that's why we can see the relevance to hear precisely the voices of leaders such as the mayors that we have with us today. I would like to conclude by saying that from the World Bank and the organizations that co-organize these, we reaffirm our commitment to continue working with the cities and the local authorities all around the world to prevent the violence against women, children, and teenagers. Together, we can transform our cities in safe spaces for these and the future generations. Thank you once again for the opportunity of being with us today, so we can share these reflections.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Peter. Now it is my pleasure to invite Mayor Pablo Munoz to give his remarks. And Mayor, I wanted to just maybe ask you one question. One of the issues I think has been that cities have been they have their own risk factors, but also pose an important opportunity for prevention. How has Quito, and how has Quito under your leadership addressed the issue of prevention of violence, including through the launch of the Global Commitment of Mayors on Gender Equality that was launched last year during the UN Safe Cities and Safe Public Spaces Global Forum? Over to you, sir.
Muchísimas gracias. Buenos días con todas.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure for me being here. I would like to comment two things before answering your question. I want to approach that on the services that we have for prevention, but I think it's also important to mention something that was proposed, to speak about two topics. First of all, thank you to the women, to the multilateral bank that is here present with this type of intersectoral activity that we are doing here together, and the interagency activity to talk about such an important topic such as the eradication against violence against women, children, and teenagers. First of all, thank you. Now, an institutional comment regarding the question. Quito has shown the firm commitment with the eradication and the prevention of violence against women and children, because we were the headquarters last here of this meeting of safe cities, right? Once we made the decision to support such an event, we are not doing it just because we want to look okay with the institutions that is fostering that. We're doing that because behind that we want to keep a commitment for the city that we can maintain, so we can show, so we can materialize that in political specific decisions. We don't want to have the meeting just to see each other, which is of course is important, but also at least in our city we want to see the decisions important for the city, and some of those I'm going to tell you. We signed the declaration of mayors and the commitment to create a safe spaces free of violence against women and children. Today we are here paying all attention, taking attentive note of the good practices that we can find in other cities around the world. And with that, I want to provide a little bit of context, the Ecuadorian context. I want to debate on the two topics that we might not talk about that much. And I feel that sometimes we are wrong once we say that we need to depoliticize topics. And the other way around, I think we need to politicize the topics in a correct way. Because when we do the other way around, we are not touching into topics that are critical to go deeper, that affects the increase of violence against children. So that's why we need to talk about that. And also, I want to mention some of the services that we have in the local level. So those are going to be seen thanks to the comments that you're going to see in terms of the policies that want to talk. When I'm talking about politics, I'm talking about parties, political parties or ideologies. I'm here talking about policy or politics in the search of looking at collective well-being. In terms of diagnosis, a whole idea is enough for me. We, in Ecuador, we were the third country in Latin America with this level, and now we are one of the unsafest countries in Latin America. Something should have happened in the last 10 years to see this destruction and that level. I believe that is the step back of the proactive policy of the states to improve the life conditions. That's a critical level. The second one, and some data, the rates of homicides in 2024 reached the 43 homicides per each 100 inhabitants. This is a very painful reality that we did not have before. Ecuador, we love Colombia for sure, but Ecuador used to, we might wonder, perhaps it was like an illusion, or if that was the reality, but we were an island of peace. We were able to isolate ourselves from the conflicts that we had in Colombia, for example, and also the conflicts in Peru. And we were able to maintain a very excellent indicators of security. Unfortunately, today is the other way around. So some other data that I want to show you how that violence is more evident on groups that we must say, groups where we can see vulnerabilities, right? Of groups of, I'd rather call that groups of priority care. I'm talking about women, youngsters, children, teenagers. But this is the idea. We were the third country in Latin America once we were in the first places in terms of the best security conditions. The explanation behind that from my municipality was the explanation behind this very painful reality. I would say that for the Ecuadorian case, we have tried to make responsible the narco-terrorism. I don't know if it's the same for all the countries. I don't know if it's the same for all the cities in Latin America, but however, we have a new label and we all blame that narco-terrorism. Evident, of course, we have a penetration of narco-terrorism for the Ecuadorian case. However, I think that also the provocation, so to call, is the increase of poverty and unemployment. And we are not talking about that much. At least in Colombia, we are blind all the time talking about just safety. From the last 2 days, I was working in local governments. I was the only mayor that presented data on how the economy is right now. And the economy is just terribly bad. One of the main victims of this is the impact on the unemployment and poverty. We have also the causes of violence that we lived in our countries. Secondly, this is a topic important for that is this is important for Ecuador, but might speak about some of the realities in other places around the world. But at least in a government, we can see more the role of the municipalities. Let me say this in another way around. In Ecuador, from the 90s, we were used to see we have a thesis in the 90s that we can hear again. We have like an implosion of the national government. So this implosion means, the national governments, we can see a recovery of the main character that local governments wants to have or are already having. I feel that for the Ecuadorian case, the step back of the social policies of protection from the central level, it makes more clear our efforts so we can provide services in that sense. Now, I want to close by saying some of those services. I will say, under the approach of, we are committed on the building process in the municipality, a system that has 3 pillars: social protection, care, and social promotion. Before I was a mayor on Quito, I was a policymaker with the support of women for the Ecuadorian case, so we can tackle these topics, how we can institutionalize the social politics or policies that can be lost due to the political position of each government. Sometimes we are looking for an act that can support those activities. From my standpoint, we can see how this system can really go around the social protection and the social promotion. Since it is a shameful the way that this is not being tackled, that's why from the municipality we are facing those things, and that's why I'm going to talk about some of the services. And just a sample. We want to structure this system: the social protection, the care, and the social promotion. As you know, some of the cases, the social protections and with the care are very well tied together. So we have approved a metropolitan policy for first early childhood. From the UNICEF, we are the first municipality, is my understanding, in Latin America with a policy that is approved just for first early childhood, with 65 million of USD for a city, 65,000. And we have a system of citizen co-living. We want to create committees of security on their neighborhoods, and one of these committees, or many of these committees, are part of a project that is called Women That Build Peace, or Peace Builders. And very important, we also have a strategy of zero harassment on public transportation, and also we have a policy. Here we're talking about policies, the others are specific services of the recovery of the security on the public spaces with safe pathways, right? So I think what the municipality of Iztapalapa in Mexico did with Carla Brugada at that moment as the mayor in Iztapalapa, and now is the leader of government in Mexico. This is very interesting. Iztapalapa changed also the indicators as Quito is in Iztapalapa is changing that in a virtuous way. Now is a very unsafe city. Once it was a very safe area, but the situation is changing, and we copied this strategy. Quito is doing tons of things that are not in the legal framework, our competences, and I have proposed this in this way. Perhaps it's not our responsibility, but it is our concern. So we are in the development on childhood development with 91 points of attention that are, given also for social organizations, but we want to have our own so we can compare, so we can analyze the evidence, can say yes, this is the way they are managing that, and the way the public service can manage those services, so we can compare. We have some services that are basically disappearing in the social and national level, but we are working in services for victims of violence, specifically women, 2 points of protections of human rights, 2 centers of equality and justice where women can receive psychological and legal support in terms of the way that we can tackle the violence. We have a shelter house for women that were victims of violences. Curiously enough, we are not receiving them many women from Quito, from the city. The justice system, the national level, are referring cases from other places in the city, and that shows the absence of those services in other cities around the country. I don't want to abuse of my time. That's why I'm going to leave that to that. We also have a services protection for women, for teenagers, victims of human trafficking, and also we have a house of El Hermano, the brother, to talk about migration and also for the case, very important presence of Venezuelan population, and also we have cases of violence to those children and those women, specifically the women that are in a mobility condition, and that's why we have the Casa del Hermano, the brother's house, just to tackle those type of cases. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think this was an excellent example of multi-sectoral approach, working as an ecosystem together, services, policies on early childhood, public transport, and really trying to bring all of this together. So thank you so much for sharing this example. I'm going to now invite Brita to, they're playing a video from Mayor Sajid Khan from London.
The safety of the people we serve will always be our first priority. And as mayors, we're uniquely placed to lead joint efforts towards that goal. That is especially important when it comes to prevention and early intervention, where partnerships with agencies, voluntary groups, and communities are essential if we're to tackle the complex causes of crime. I will briefly share two examples of that approach at work in London. In 2019, we established our country's first violence reduction unit. Over the past 5 years, VRU has invested in up to 350,000 positive opportunities and targeted interventions for young Londoners, tackling violence before it happens. And as part of my VORG strategy here in London, we've engaged with schools across London to educate children and young people about healthy and respectful relationships. We've produced toolkits for teachers with lesson plans and advice to help them address these issues in an age-appropriate way. I look forward to sharing more details of these policies and to hearing more about the good work underway across the globe towards our shared ambition of safer cities for all. Thank you.
Some interesting commonalities emerging from learning from Quito and from London. I think the importance of partnerships, including with civil society, as well as the importance of early interventions. I like the idea of really focusing, starting young with schools and teaching children about healthy and respectful relationships as a basis for prevention of violence against children and violence against women. So really another very important example. I'm now going to invite a presentation from Diego Bejenaro, who is with the PAHO office here. And he's going to share with us some examples of how PAHO has been implementing safe cities and GBV prevention programs in urban areas. Over to you.
Hola, muy buenos días.
Hello, good morning. Apologies, I'm going to break the protocol a little bit here. Let me stand up. All right, first of all, as a Bogotan, a guy from Bogota, welcome to our city. We have had some very rainy and cold days, but I know that we are so warm. You can feel how charismatic and warm we are, so hopefully you feel very welcome here. The presentation has two parts, or two invitations that we want to provoke you with two elements. First of all, I want to tell you very briefly an activity that has been fostered by the PAHO for more than 30 years ago, the movement of cities, communities, healthy of the Americas. And through this activity, through the project of urban governance for the health and the well-being, this is a global project that we have replicated in Bogota, in Mexico. For las Americas, we have worked mainly on the intersectoral aspect of it with social participation, so we can reduce the gender-based violences. Apologies, I'm moving here the slides, isn't it? Okay. All right, so as I was telling you, the movement of the municipalities are healthy. This is a platform of mayors, male and females. So we want to share experiences through it in terms of the exchange among sectors, equity, governance. We have more than 3 dozen municipalities in more than 15 countries, building different type of national networks where we have scenarios. Some municipalities, some mayors, and the PAJO has worked with the technical advisory process to promote the participation in this whole movement. From 2023, thanks to the fifth summit of mayors of the healthy municipalities, we launched some criteria that it was not just a list clustering on some indications, but we are trying to identify if a municipality can really achieve the status of a municipality that is healthy. So those criteria have different policy actions, which is the strengthening of leadership, the governance, the role of precisely the mayors, and the training of the confirmation of these healthy municipalities, the promotion of the intersectoral activities or exchange for the reduction of the participation of different types of sectors that can foster the reduction of improvement of some indicators of health. Community participation is very, very important to propose or to establish the criteria of a municipality that is healthy. We want to also foster and promote safe environments to ensure the access to basic services and the capacity to answer for emergencies in the health sector. We have more than 30 criteria, but some of the criteria are very specific regarding violences. And in the case of the criteria 26, which is to foster the security of the population, there is another very important, which to eliminate any form of violence. In this, we identify if a municipality, in this municipality there is a possibility of there are services that are regarding the promotion, the prevention of violences based on gender. So basically that is the movement. Now the idea is to share with you this movement. We want to invite you to join us, but basically in this context of this movement, we have the program of the project of governance for the well-being and the health. We have this pilot with Mexico and Mexico City and Bogota. In Bogota, we choose Bosa locality, some of the areas that unfortunately is showing some of the highest indicators for gender-based violence, and that's why we have the motivation to work with this community, but focus on the strengthening of the social participation and also the participation of social organizations led by women that are working on gender-based violences. So this strategy, the strengthening of these leaderships, have different phases for its execution. First of all, the city was able to adopt this project of urban governance for the well-being and the health. This week, we allowed to the Bogota city to adhere to this strategy through the signature of our Mayor Fernando Galard to the summit. Thanks the fact that we had the visit of Mr. Vargas Barbosa. So thanks to this convention, we work with the Intersectoral Committee of Health that cluster all the sectors of the cities, and through this strategic vision that this committee has, we choose as well the gender-based violences, and that's why we prioritize the area of Bosa, which is at the southwest of Bogota, with these high indicators. Something that is very important that I want to mention here, precisely knowing that we had the support of the local mayor. For her, of course, it was part of her local development, which was a very specific point on her development plan. That's why this element was very important for the development of the project. And also, at the same time, we were working on the gender-based violences in each one of the areas of the district. We have some committees for the areas, for each one of these areas, specifically organizations led by women. And also, we choose a group of people that were partaking in this committee, so we were able to work with them in a deeper way, and I'm going to tell you a little bit how we work with them. Now, from this committee, we choose many women that were interested in working on this project. We have 12 community organizations that partake on that. At the beginning, we have the district health secretary, and also the district of women, and also some social organizations. In the first phase, we analyzed the situation. We went deep on the nature of the gender-based violence in this area. we include their vision of this problem, and also we propose the social determinants of this type of violences. And then we work with a social mapping process to go deeper into this problem. We have some opportunities of change with Mexico City. Casually, Mexico also were working on the gender-based violences are their approach for their intervention. And also with them, we work with some trainings in public policies and also care policies, and also the policies for the services provided for gender-based violence victims. And also we provide this, we created a toolkit that was provided by the PAHO. Our colleague Juliana is here, and she was the creator of this toolkit thanks to the Project of Migrations. This toolkit is some dynamics, some activities that can be easily understood by the people so they can implement that, so they can work concept, roads for attention, so we can strengthen the technical capacities of these women so they can execute the leadership through their own organizations. And also we realized that this toolkit was well accepted. It was very important to strengthen their capacities. So thanks to them, to those, they themselves were using the toolkit within their own organizations, and they were strengthening the social networks or working networks to spread the information about the roadmap for services and the toolkit itself. Now we have some very important milestones. First, the exchange with Mexico. Some of them were virtually, some of them face to face. Some of the leaders of BOSA were able to travel to Mexico City to exchange their experiences, and that was very interesting because the vision in Bogota was into the community level, right? This strength on the organizations that is very important. And Mexico perhaps was not that strong, that they were just working on the way they would provide services to the violences through the institutions. So these are two different approaches, and they were complementing each other in a very interesting way. There was an exchange of learnings and knowledges that was very, very interesting. Now, as I was telling you, we have the social mapping process, very important. For example, we were talking about the adaptation services for women, or when we're talking about these services, the roadmaps for the services, it's very important to hear the voice of the women in the design of these strategies, because sometimes we do not identify this social situation or what is really happening in the area, but the women, they really know, they have the views who can adapt the spaces, or how the routes of services can be more friendly based on the needs of the population. So the vision of the community, the vision of these leaderships are so important in terms of the decision-making process for the policymakers. You can see here the toolkits are very dynamic. They were building dolls, for example. They were adding a sentimental feeling. They were working with the reconciliations processes as well. Very, very important, because thanks to that, they were strengthening the network of women thanks to this work. It is also very important to mention here, of course, since the women were working in this scenario, sometimes they were part also of the local operative committee of gender and women. So their participation was changing. They were more successful in their participation, a stronger participation, because they had a more advanced concepts, and because they were more clear about the real situation of the services that were provided. Thanks to that, we're having a different conversation with the institutions. The institutions now are understanding that they were having a very strong organization behind each one of those voices, so they have a horizontal conversation between the parts. And also the institutions were partaking also of these workshops, the referrals, the point of contact of the Secretary of Women, of the Secretary of Health were part also of the process, and thanks to that they also have the toolkits, and they have worked as well on the strengthening of these topics inside of the local areas. Now, conclusions. It is very important to mention here that in order to strengthen the advocacy of the organizations on the reduction of gender-based violences, it is very important, besides everything that we can do on the service providers. Once we have a case of violence, we need to go deep into the prevention, and that's why it's so important to strengthen the organizations, to strengthen also the leaderships that we have led by women, and also the participation education, the empowerment as well, the leadership as well. All of those topics will be very relevant once we want to work on this. This is an invitation for the local mayors and the way you can work with the organizations, how you can take advantage of these opportunities so you can strengthen these dynamics. And also it's very important to connect other sectors in this type of activities. Is very clear, because when we have intersectoral committees, we want the communities to participate. Normally speaking, we understand that participation is just enough for people to be there as an attendance, so they can also receive the accountability process from the institutions, so they can have this process in the policies that they have for gender-based violences. But this will change if we strengthen the women, the organizations, so we can improve the relationship between these entities, and also the strengthening of other type of skills, not just the concept, but also soft skills, so they can strengthen new activities. Sometimes the women will say it's hard for us to talk about public speaking. It's hard for us conflict solving. Topics that are not necessarily part of our politics and in our intersectional agendas, but those are very important because we want to ensure their participation in this type of local and intersectoral participation. So that's it. Thank you so much. That was our experience in Bogota, the experience that we share also with Mexico, and this is an invitation to foster the social and community participation in all the local activities that we had. Very important role of the local mayors to strengthen these type of activities. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Diego, and really important message here about when we think local, we have to also think about communities within cities, really go down to those, sub-district, sub-municipality level, and really work on empowering and working with the communities and community leaders. So thank you for sharing this very important example. I'm going to take a pause here from our presentations now before I move to Manuel and to Brita, because we have a lot of questions. I'm sure many of you have questions for our panelists. We also have people online, as this was actually being streamed online. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to invite one question from this group here physically, and then I'm going to switch to one question from our virtual participants. One question from the audience over here, and then, or do you want me to, is there a lot of questions online? Lots? Okay. Is it okay if we start with people online first? Okay, thank you. Diana, over to you.
Good morning, thank you so much. I just want to let you all know that there's 182 people connected to this session, so a great turnout from our online audience. We have a couple of questions which I will pose in Spanish. Además de las experiencias académicas.
Besides the academy experiences at different levels, how can we qualify the population citizen skills for the promotion and the protection of mental health? Which that is one of the questions here. Another question. I am a nurse, and I feel that in the education and the health sectors, can we create we have a project that provided very good results because we were able to reach many schools. However, we do not be blind once something is not working correctly. That was more a comment, but it's important to say, how can we monitor, or what can we do to constantly assess that what we are doing is actually having the outcomes that we are expecting? Those are the online questions that we had so far.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Munoz, would you like to respond to any of the two questions, and then I'll give it to you.
Gracias. Respecto
Thank you so much. And regarding the first one, this is a topic that I feel, mental health, right? This one has been forgotten in the agenda in the national level and also in a local level. I need to say here with satisfaction, mild satisfaction, so to speak, because we're still hoping for the outcomes. But I'm very happy to say that for the Ecuadorian case, we are the first and the only municipality that has taken seriously the topic of mental health. I'm saying this because, of course, we need to understand the national context, right? In the Ecuadorian case, the Constitution says that the health and the education, I totally agree, those are the responsibilities of the national level, right? I agree with that, of course, because for the Ecuadorian case, if we are allowing the education and health to be the responsibility of the municipalities, we have more than 221 municipalities with different capacities that goes from, from the lowest to the highest. The capacity of the republic, the capital is not way closer to a municipality in the Amazonian area, right? Just an example. If we decentralize these areas, then we will face the problem. And this is an example that I want to share with you. Now, health and education, they are not necessarily a responsibility of the mayor of Quito. However, we have faced it because of the absence of a consistent policy on mental health. So we have done two things. Although the question is just talking about the capacities of the citizens, with this I'm going to add three things. First of all, we have launched programs for mental health for people and also on the context of their families. An example, once again, in the specific situation that we are going, unfortunately, the Ecuador now has electricity outages between 8 and 14 hours. That's the time window. Within that time frame, we have increased the index of family violence or domestic violence, and the ones that are affected the most of this type of violence are women. For example, if you don't have electricity in the morning, you have to wake up much earlier so you can ensure that your kids are going to school with breakfast, right? So in this context, we have worked on mental health programs that are not just reaching the people, but also understanding the family context, including also that family context. Also, it's very, very painful to see the increase on suicidal figures for Ecuador and also for Quito. We are the only municipality that are part of the system of emergencies. We have a hotline, which is 911. We may have that in many cities, but for the case of Quito, if you call 911, you can also, you yourself, can report a potential case of suicide. So we are the only municipality. You can say, okay, do you have a fire? We can also ask, is there a possibility, a potential suicide? Then you can be referred to a specialist on psychology, so you can talk about that. A couple of days ago, I reviewed a campaign that I think we need to work a lot on the campaigns of communications, our communication campaigns. For example, the anxiety cases at schools have increased 3 or 4 times fold, but we do not speak about that. The way we kind of put the topic in not in the spotlight. So we don't want to spread panic, but we need to break the taboo as well in the society. So that's why we want to invest a lot. So in the communications, we can really talk about these topics. Of course, in the Latin America way to say things, you can just pretend that the decision is not really happening just by not talking about the topic. I am very concerned about our youngsters, the situation that are happening, especially with teenagers. We need to have the correct communication so the teenagers can have the possibility to talk about these topics. I fully agree as well with the evidence on health and education. However, we need to acknowledge that we don't do that much on that topic, and we are doing even less with the time. In the planning system at the national level, I had experience working with them. We did a follow-up but we never did the assessment or the evaluation. I think the World Bank or the agencies or the PAHO or maybe the UNICEF or any other, they should support with resources at the local level for the impact assessment, because what will allow the modification of the way we work is not following the indication. We speak a lot about the way we analyze our indicators, but we are not talking about the assessment of the impact. We cannot compare, we are not talking about the way we compare with the factual situations. This is the way I provide the services, where we have more success, for example. In Ecuador, this is an example for childhood. We have a very interesting experience. We were able to see that in the centers of education, they have less impact versus the home visits that was connected with the affection and the training of the professionals. So I believe, or I feel that we are not talking about that much about the assessment of the impact, but perhaps it is connected with the national level, at least for the Ecuadorian case. Perhaps it's different in some other countries, but at least in Ecuador, the lack of resources, it is not, the austerity is not any longer a principle of the administration, but is more like a dogma of the management of the public policies. If they are not investing for essential things, they won't invest for the assessment of the impact. And we need to work on the assessment of the impact too, so we can say that based on this evidence, it's not just follow-up to the indicator, but it's the evidence that is coming from a serious work of assessment of the impacts, then we can modify the policies in specific ways. All right, regarding mental health, I think that that's a very important topic. I believe in the health sector, we want to communicate in the way all the sectors are having an incidence in the specific topics. Sometimes we have the idea that the best way to work on that is direct services to the person, or perhaps through psychology. However, I recall that the context is so important. We need to analyze what is happening around the community, the city, so we can really think about this. An experience that I had once we had these intersectional boards, once we were talking about mental health or violences. Sometimes the environment sector was not present, or infrastructure was not present, because they feel that it was not important for them. Maybe it was not their responsibility. Sometimes I got in touch with the environmental sector and I wonder, okay, what if we invest in public spaces, parks, where the guys are just spending the free time? Perhaps we can create better environments for kids and boys, so we can improve mental health through that. If I work with schools, for example, strengthening of capacities that they have, the capacities of teachers, so they can identify cases of abuse, or so they can have some tools to see the signs once the student gets approached, because they might not have another social network. So maybe if we work on that, we might improve a better environment for the youngster or for a victim of violence. I believe that, yes, it is hard to do all of this, because in terms of the impact, it's very hard to analyze the share of the advocacy per sector in a specific phenomena. However, the role of the participation, the role of the organizations is very important here, because it's not just a matter of indicators. We cannot measure the impact of a program just through the indicators, but the narratives are also very important to analyze that. The way they feel the event, for example, of a violence, for example, or how they perceive the role of some other organizations, so they can improve the situation as a whole. So the way we speak with other stakeholders, the way we connect them with the topics once they feel that they might not be responsible for that, and also to be always open to listen to the community, so we can go deeper in understanding of these social phenomena, so we can create these strategies that will allow better impacts through the services of the intersectoral action.
Okay, one or two questions from audience here. Yes, please.
Muchísimas gracias, Brita.
Thank you so much, Brita. Hello, good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to be part of this panel. I am Victoria Costoya. I am the Director of Research and International Cooperation and the Judicial Power of Buenos Aires. 3 years ago, for the last 3 years, we have done the implementation of the 7 strategies of Inspire for the prevention of violence, and we coordinate that with the judicial power and the legislative power on the implementation of this plan. That was very complex, and it's still complex because we are facing so many challenges, as the mayor just mentioned, regarding the changing policies that is changing the way the citizens can access to the rights, and also the policies that we get from the national level that are moving all around in terms of the way we can really protect the human rights. So it's so rich to hear the experiences of other cities, because the reality of the cities is that the stakeholders, we know better than anyone, and the protection systems and the coordination, all of that is so complicated. It affects a lot the delivery of this working plan. So I want to ask you, from your experience and yours, how can you articulate with the other powers? Once we share the intention statement to the productivity, we work with the mayor of the city of Buenos Aires. He committed, we signed the commitment document with the 3 powers, with an organization of the civil society that is part of the Inspiring Working Group. Thanks to that, we were able to work, to start the whole process. But I would love to hear your experiences in that level, in terms of the coordination with all the subnational powers. Thank you so much.
One last question, and then I will go back to the panel. But yeah, please.
So my name is Jago Stokes. We're part of CS Now. We're a youth advocacy. We're a youth advocacy group in the United States. I just wanted to say, before I ask my question, on behalf of, as being a teenager myself, I wanted to say that I'm very proud of the world leadership that we have here. I'm very proud that you guys are working so diligently to solve these incredibly important issues. So my question is, as cities and as countries grow and develop, how do you plan to implement a youth voice? Is it maybe through advocacy groups or councils? How do you plan to implement that voice?
Ok. Bueno, frente a la última pregunta, el tema de la participación de los jóvenes creo que es clave. Creo que todavía nos falta mucho para fortalecer la participación. Y yo creo que es un tema, es porque los escenarios que existen de participación actuales, digamos, sean comités de participación o sean escenarios ya de democracia efectiva en términos de votación, de participación electoral, yo creo que el sistema como está, digamos, como que no es muy atractivo para que los jóvenes participen, como que a veces no hay un interés real, porque seguramente hay una desconfianza frente a cómo la institucionalidad puede cambiar las realidades de los jóvenes, ¿no? Entonces creo que esa parte es muy difícil. Yo creo que también hay escenarios que no son amigables o que no tienen o no se han adaptado a las realidades actuales de los jóvenes, digamos, en términos de participación a través de tecnologías, de redes sociales. Creo que falta mucho trabajo en eso, precisamente porque estos escenarios de participación a veces son, no sé, asambleas en la mañana o en horarios donde los jóvenes pues no van a tener la posibilidad de participar por diferentes escenarios. Entonces, creo que hay que comenzar a cambiar esos paradigmas de la participación. Yo simplemente quiero contarles sobre una experiencia que estamos trabajando en la ciudad de Armenia. Es un proyecto que se llama Young Game Changers, que se está trabajando también con UN Habitat. Precisamente es eso, ¿no? Es para mirar de qué manera los jóvenes tienen capacidad de incidencia en la adecuación o la adaptación de espacios públicos. Entonces se hacen unos ejercicios de decir, bueno, este lugar es donde los jóvenes generalmente se reúnen en las tardes, ¿cómo podemos hacer un ejercicio de participación para modificar ese espacio de acuerdo a las necesidades de los jóvenes, pero muy vinculado con el gobierno local, ¿no? Entonces yo creo que es muy importante precisamente cómo los gobiernos locales comienzan a adaptarse también en el ejercicio de participación para que sea más atractivo la participación.
Participation with youngsters. Thank you so much. It is my understanding that Viviana needs to close the event. But first of all, the way we can coordinate this in Quito, there is a critical difference now in the federal state in Argentina and some other centralized state like ours. The coordination in this sense with other functions of the state is almost new, right? We work on the local executive and we have the legislative one. Sometimes we have zero dialogue with justice. We also the Centers for Equity and Justice, and they work as a mediation and with legal support for victims of violence and youngsters. In terms of the youngster participation, I believe the big challenge is how we can include their voices so their voices are transferred into decisions from the academy. I was very critical in terms of the participation because sometimes the participation of youngsters are the ones that can validate the mechanism. If we don't do this participation activity, we cannot say that the tool is validated. But the thing here is what is said on these areas, if that is included in the decision-making process for the authorities. I think that's a challenge. I agree with you. The participation for youngsters, we still need to work a lot on mechanisms that are updated. For the Ecuadorian case, we work in something that was called the wiki participation, meaning how from the participation of the networks we're working and the way we can include this information in a bill, for example. Sometimes we are analyzing that the social networks, this is a critical situation. Sometimes we can see just the worst part of the social networks, but we should take the best from those social networks so we can position ourselves, so we can include that as a truly mechanisms of participation.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we have to close. We are running close to plenary and Viviana has to leave. I just wanted to thank all the participants and all the people who've joined here as well as online for your very thoughtful questions. I wanted to just maybe close with three takeaways from what I picked up today. One, and I think it's an interesting remark that you made, Mayor Munoz. We must politicize prevention, but in the right way. So I think that that's a very important learning. I think the important thing is to think about how to bring all these sectoral services together, and mayors can play a critical role. I really appreciated the approach to engage communities, women's organizations, the importance of getting youth advocates on board. And I wanted to maybe close with this idea that we really need to think of healthy cities as safe cities, violence-free cities, and we need to work together to make this happen. Thank you all, and over to you, Viviana, for the final closing.
Muchas gracias a la moderadora por tan buen resumen de esta sesión. Quiero aprovechar para, en nombre de ONU Mujeres, agradecer a los alcaldes por su liderazgo. Conozco bien el trabajo del alcalde de Quito y su compromiso en materia de eliminación de violencia contra las mujeres, los niños y las niñas, y creo que es importante el reconocer ese liderazgo que en ocasiones se realiza en contextos tremendamente complejos, con situaciones de crisis múltiples y donde no siempre la agenda de los derechos de las mujeres, los vientos soplan a favor. En ese sentido, muchas gracias al alcalde desde ONU Mujeres, en coalición, en alianza con el Banco Mundial, con la Organización Mundial de la Salud y con OPS, pues vamos a continuar promoviendo esta clase de intercambios entre ciudades y continuando también documentando esos esfuerzos que se realizan, porque sin duda son muy inspiradores también para otras ciudades. Entendemos que como gobiernos locales ustedes juegan un rol fundamental porque sois los gobiernos que realmente están más cerca de la gente,
to
más
the
cerca de...
cities, closer to the communities, and also in this sense, their role is critical so we can create cities that are safer, more inclusive, and more sustainable for children and youngsters and teenagers and women. I would like to have a special call about the importance of the municipalities, of mayors, so they can include more women under the decision-making process. We are in a global context of trouble, crisis in the world. We are constantly talking about that. The decisions that were taken previously has taken us to this crisis at this moment. That's why I believe that it's important to understand that we won't change the world with the current rules of the game. We need to change those rules precisely. For that, we need to include more women under the decision-making process. For the ones that make decisions, but for the ones that are part of that, the ones that historically are not part of it, we need to work from the commitment that we have from the cities. I would like to say something else as well regarding the violence against women. We know that this is a global pandemic. We are close to the 25th of December, of those 16 days of activism. We are saying that besides this global pandemic, this is representing a huge cost for all the countries. This represents a 3.7% of the GDP. However, we are not investing on and we complexity of these new realities requires also investment on prevention, because that is the best investment. Is investment that saves lives. At this point, it's just a 0.2% on the official aid to the development. We need to change this. We need to invest more from the beginning so we can prevent. This also includes the prevention and the strengthening and organization of women, though they play a very important role in prevention, and also the promotion of public policies that are always facing and leading these social changes. We want to add the importance of changing towards the elimination of childhood marriages, the culture of rape. We are moving to the last debates in this bill at the Congress. We are pending one more debate to work on this. We want to keep up working this in the regional level, but also all together among the agencies. We need to work together. Of course, the complexity of problems won't be won't allow us to solve this in a silos or from one single institution. We need to create networks. In this sense, UN Women with the agency of the United Nations, we are going to keep on working, supporting projects such as Ciudades Seguras, or spaces that are safe in the global level, working on the next objective humanitarian level, the peace and the development, on the framework of generation of equality. We do not have that much time for the 30 years of the Declaration of Beijing. This is a critical moment to expedite everything regarding the prevention against violence, prevention of violence against women. We want to thank all the mayors, with the partners, with the stakeholders, with all the countries that are part of this initiative that is called Ciudades Seguras. We have 7 cities that are part of this initiative, and beyond the individual actions that we could have to the development of different cities, it is important to mention the network that we have, sharing the good practices that inspire many other cities around the country. So we want to keep encouraging you so those efforts and those commitments can be translated into actions. I believe that is the responsibility that we all have, to keep on working as a network, to keep on working from the partnerships, to keep building bridges where others want to build walls. We want to work together, taking care of those networks that are saving lives. Thank you so much. Nuevamente,